Hello and welcome to the City of Greater Geelong's Community Infrastructure Grants Presentation 2022. We acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. We acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of our Greater Geelong community today. This PowerPoint will talk you through the City's Community Infrastructure Grants program and will cover off on the following topics: about the grants, who they are for, planning and capital grants, matched funding exemptions, how to apply, key dates, what you can apply for, what won't be funded, the assessment criteria, nominated funding themes, the applicant checklist, and a series of resources. The City of Greater Geelong is committed to building a more sustainable, resilient and inclusive community to improve the lives of our people. Planning, building and maintaining high-quality community infrastructure in partnership with our community and key stakeholders is essential for our overall physical and mental health, well-being and economic prosperity. The community infrastructure grants support the planning and delivery of projects that aim to upgrade and renew existing community facilities within the City of Greater Geelong. Projects must be community-led initiatives which allow groups to provide a better level of service. Priority will be given to projects that increase community access and participation, demonstrate collaboration between community groups and result in greater use of facilities. Community infrastructure includes open spaces, recreation and sports facilities, arts and cultural facilities, community centres, early years facilities and meeting places. This infrastructure provides places and spaces to strengthen community. The expected outcome of the community infrastructure grants focuses on making improvements to existing infrastructure to be more accessible, equitable and affordable to people within our community, improving existing local community, cultural, environment and sporting facilities for increased utilisation and functionality, improve facilities and community spaces to cultivate learning and knowledge. The community infrastructure grants are designed to close the gap between infrastructure for all members of the community. The City's grants are primarily offered to not-for-profit community organisations, with some exceptions to suit the objectives of individual grants. All applicants must possess an Australian Business Number, ABN, or provide a statement via supplier form. Both are available from the ATO website. Applicants must have a fully acquitted previous successful application as required and have no outstanding debts or arrears to the City of Greater Geelong. Your application will require an auspice if your not-for-profit organisation is not incorporated or not one of the other types of legal entities listed above. An auspice is an organisation that meets our eligibility criteria and agrees to support your application. If you're successful, the grant funds will be paid directly to the auspice, who must then pass them on to you. If you're planning on using an auspice, you must obtain approval from your proposed auspice before you submit your application and ensure the auspice organisation is involved in submitting the application. Be aware that some auspice organisations may charge an auspice fee. This is at their discretion and should be negotiated between the applicant and the auspice. There are some circumstances where applications will not be accepted. These applications include organisations and individuals, if applicable, with outstanding debts or arrears to the City of Greater Geelong or experiencing insolvency or bankruptcy. Organisations that have not satisfactorily acquitted previous funding from the City as required. This includes organisations that have acted as an auspice for an unincorporated group. Tenant clubs, organisations that have not resolved a breach of the Victorian Code for Community Sport, and for-profit organisations. There is a total grant pool of $3 million, with individual grants being offered of up to $50,000 for planning projects and $350,000 for capital works projects. Planning is a critical phase of any project and will set your organisation and project up for success. A well-planned project will have a defined scope, cost and project requirement. In most cases, a planning grant application takes place before applying for a capital works grant. In the context of planning grants, there are two main types that will be considered. Planning applications plan for future infrastructure developments. Community groups can apply for planning grants to fund strategic planning or design development for future infrastructure projects, such as strategic infrastructure planning, facility development plans, which encompass planning on the council-owned area of land, and infrastructure design, concept through to detailed design for future infrastructure projects. Capital works applications are for ready-to-go projects. These projects are designed or planned and incorporate a cost plan. Examples include cricket practice facilities, which have designs, and sports lighting projects. Capital works applications assist with cost of ready-to-go community infrastructure projects. Infrastructure projects must be openly accessible to and have strong community benefits for the residents of the City of Greater Geelong and align with Council's key priority areas. Both funding streams may require your club to work with specialists relative to your grant application, such as a consultant, architect or engineer. Key to engaging the right specialist for your project is developing a clear and well-defined project brief. Let's look at some project examples. Planning projects involve planning for future infrastructure developments. Renewal projects entail bringing an asset back up to its original standard. Upgrade projects is focused on making the asset better than the original standard. And build new projects involving brand new assets. The City will only fund up to 2/3 of your total project cost. Client groups must match our funding with $1 for every $2 granted by the City. Match funding ensures project viability and demonstrates community commitment to finalising the project. If there are circumstances where applying organisations are unable to match the 2-to-1 ratio, exemptions may be granted. Exemptions for matched funding are available and can be applied for through Smarty Grants for organisations who prove inability to provide a 1/3 contribution. Organisations who wish to apply for a full or partial exemption from matched funding must apply via our Smarty Grants online system. You can access the online form directly through the resource package on the City's website. Importantly, if you're applying for an exemption, you must do this first and include the outcome of the assessment with your planning or capital works funding application. The application for match funding exemption requires you to describe the project and estimate the total cost. Explain why you cannot contribute the required funds. Outline how much you can contribute, if any. Provide financial statements for the last 3 years. And address the assessment criteria. Please note that financial statements can be sourced from Consumer Affairs Victoria through MyCav, the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, or in another format provided the City agrees it's acceptable. Assessment of exemptions will take into consideration financial capacity of the applicant to contribute funds, improved access to service, age of organisation with a preference to support new and emerging organisations, diversity and/or disadvantage of applicants' members, community or location, and alignment to the city's policies. Examples and ideas of what can be applied for are shown on the screen. This is a guide of examples only. Before submitting your application, ensure that you have all the right information. Information you need for your application includes financial statement for the last 3 years matched funding approval, evidence of support for the proposed work by other tenants or users of the facility, quotes as per the guideline requirements, project cost of up to $25,000, one current written quote, project cost of $25,000 to $150,000, 3 current written quotes, project cost of $150,000 or above, 3 current written quotes, and an independent quantity surveyor's report. You may choose to include as a minimum the QS report only. If your application is successful, you must provide 3 quotes to secure funding and enter into a funding agreement. Current equals within the last 6 months. Further information you need for your application includes concept design drawings for your proposal, particularly for projects requesting $150,000 and above in funding, site plans, a certificate of currency for public liability insurance with a minimum cover of $10 million for any one occurrence, and evidence that all other funding sources are secured. There are a range of projects or activities that will not be funded. There are also a range of costs that these grants will not cover. A well-planned project will demonstrate the project is well-planned and clearly describes what is described in the project scope, and the project is ready to go. Support letters for projects that involve partnerships, a clear, balanced budget that shows total income equals total expenditure, including contingencies. Where there are no other additional sources of funding, applicants must provide evidence of exemption from match funding. Relevant construction and/or architectural drawings, permits and approvals, demonstrated capacity that the applicant has the necessary expertise to support the delivery of the project, written quotes that accurately reflect the complete scope of proposed works as follows: project cost up to $25,000, one current written quote, project cost between $25,000 and $150,000, 3 current written quotes, project cost of $150,000 and above, 3 current written quotes, and an independent quantity surveyor's report. You may choose to include as a minimum the QS report only. If your application is successful, you must provide 3 quotes to secure funding and enter into a funding agreement. Current equals within the last 6 months. Community impact relates to how your project will benefit the community. Your application must demonstrate that your project responds to a clear need or gap in community infrastructure. How your project will deliver one or all of the following: strengthen the capacity of an organisation or groups to deliver existing programs, provide or generate additional services for the community, have a positive impact on the health and well-being of our local community, The community feels welcome and valued for their unique contribution, regardless of age, ability, gender, cultural background, geographic location or income status. For private applicants, how is long-term ongoing community access to the infrastructure guaranteed? Environmental impact. The application must demonstrate that the project improves the environmental sustainability of community infrastructure from concept and design through to decommissioning by delivering one or more of the following environmental benefits: reduced demand for limited and non-renewable resources such as water, materials and fossil fuel-based energy, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, reduced pollution, toxic byproducts and waste production. The Council may, on an annual basis, nominate priority funding themes which will attract an additional score as part of the application assessment. The nominated priority funding themes for 2022-23 attracting additional scores are: Access for all abilities. 10% means demonstration that the project will empower people with a disability to be active contributors and participants in our community. Social equity. 10% means the outcomes of social equity are intended to result in an increased sense of belonging, universal participation, and a level playing field for all. If the total request for funding exceeds the grant funds available, we will prioritise applications that have not received funding from the City in the previous financial year, and applications from organisations that do not receive funding from electronic gaming machines. You do not need to secure permits or approvals before applying, but if your funding application is successful, securing them is a condition of the grant. The City may choose not to make any payments until the relevant permits and approvals are secured and submitted with the funding agreement. You must demonstrate that you are aware of the necessary permits and approvals in your application. Applications for community infrastructure grants must be made via our Smarty Grants online system. There are two ways to access the online application form. Visit the Community Grants page at the Geelong Australia website, select the grant program you wish to apply for from the list, click the Apply Online button that appears on the page, log in or create an account. Or visit geelongsmartygrants.com.au applicant, select Current Rounds at the top right of the page, select the grant you wish to apply for, log in or create an account, then complete and submit the form. After all the information you've just received, you may have a question or two. You can contact our grants team by phoning 5272 5560 or emailing communitygrants@geelongcity.vic.gov.au. Applications will be accepted until 5 p.m. on the closing date. Incomplete or late submissions of applications will not be accepted. You are encouraged to apply for matched funding exemption as early as possible. We will notify you of the outcome within 2 to 3 weeks of receiving your application. Universally, all successful grant applications support the planning and delivery of community-led infrastructure projects that help us maintain the lifestyle and strong sense of community our region has always enjoyed. This is achieved by making improvements to existing infrastructure to be more accessible, equitable, and affordable to people within our community. Improving existing local community, cultural, environment, and sporting facilities for increased utilisation and functionality. Improve facilities and community spaces to cultivate learning and knowledge. To learn more about the grants, visit the Community Infrastructure Grants page on the Geelong Australia website. And good luck, and thank you for playing your part in our clever and creative future.